All right, so welcome to Screen Time with today's Communiqué, and I'm so thrilled and excited to have Mr. Will Tidwell of Speak Up Zee to
Absolutely.
join us for our conversation today about all things voting. We know that the election process has begun. Early
Mhm.
voting has begun here in the state of Arkansas, and we know that Election Day is just a few days away on Tuesday, November 3rd. So we want to have a conversation about voting, all things concern voting. But first, let me welcome you to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ms. Key. It's a pleasure. I've been following, you and your amazing brand for some time. So to get that, that call for us to do this was exciting. So of course, I was going to say yes. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, and likewise, you do such great work, and so I'm glad that you were able to break away for just a few moments to spend some time with us talking about voting. And so, before we jump into the topic and the subject of voting, let's learn a little bit more about you. For
Okay.
those who may not know you, fill us in. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, like you said, Will Zee Tidwell, born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, right in the south end of town. Always been a hustler. Always been a man that just loved to serve, and always been really great with my hands. And that's what I was taught at a young age. Anything I want to go get it. And so that really I think molded me into the person that I am now.
Great.
And people a lot of times ask me, why did you start the company you started? Why do you do the things you do? And because I think the real thing is that when I was so young, I had a father that like he never believed in spoon feeding me anything I wanted. If I wanted something, it was that you waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning on your summer vacation to work for the things you wanted. You gotta go find a way to get it. You gotta figure it out. And at the time I didn't understand it, right? But I think those experiences and him molding me, raising me the way he raised me, it helped me become the man I am today. So yeah, man, that's just a little snippet about me.
That's beautiful. So shout out to Pops. And
Yeah, of course.
so, so let's talk about how that relates to the issue of voting. I know that you do a lot of community service, a lot of community work. You're
Right,
in the community all the time. And
right.
so, what are the topics of conversation as it relates to voting? What are those important issues that people that you're working with in the community, what are they talking about?
Um, I think one of the biggest topics when it comes that ties directly back into voting is I'm a big advocate when it comes to things like homelessness, lack of resources, lack of opportunities, and the things of that nature. And a lot of people wouldn't even think that things such as that relate directly back into voting, but they have no idea that the not and see I saw something so powerful too a while back that spoke to we all only think about voting. We think about the president and the vice president and those things, but we don't even realize those people on a local level, right? The people like Ms. Joyce Elliott running for Congress, or Antoine Phillips, or Tracy Steele running for mayor, or Frank Scott being our mayor, people like that, right? Those type of people are the ones that have the true, power to make an impact for us on a local level, to where they can help us fight against homelessness and the lack of resources for the youth and things of that nature. So that's always been a big focus point for every program, every initiative, everything that we do, right? To where we're figuring out how can we combat those issues and how can we work side by side with these young men and women that have the power to change these issues, right? So I think those are always going to be some hot topics when it comes to the work that we do.
And so you mentioned the local elections
Right,
and
right, right,
how a lot of people sometimes go out and they only vote for the presidential elections and don't even worry about voting in those off years where those local elections are so important. And
right,
seeing how that is such a great issue and an
right,
important issue that impacts us directly in the
right,
community, how do you think that we can get the community, particularly communities of color,
right.
young people, how do we get them to make that connection that those local elections are just as important as the national elections?
I think it's simply that. I think because something I always say, especially when I'm, when I'm speaking to the youth and I'm, I'm traveling and speaking and things of that nature, is this is a message I preach often, is that a lot of times as human beings, we don't care unless it's about us or it's about someone we love and care about, or it's impacting someone directly connected to us, right? And
Right.
so I feel like the thing that we have to really master is figuring out how to communicate and convey a message to show them that by you becoming an advocate for voting and voting on a local level and supporting these local officials, that this has a direct impact on your life. This could be the difference in you getting a pay raise and you becoming homeless. It could be the difference in you having health care or you not like those type of little issues. I think so. It's really putting putting into their world, right? If that makes sense, showing them that by you being and wanting to be that change and actually taking the time to vote for these local officials, this could help your life in these ways. And by you not doing it, and we keeping the same people in office that have been in office forever, that have never, cared about change or actually cared about your well-being, these are the things that will continue to happen. So I think it starts with, stepping into their world and making it relatable for them, the things that they're dealing with day in and day out.
And speaking of, I'm glad you mentioned that, making the issues relatable.
Absolutely.
Have you found that um, first time voters that you may or may not have encountered, well, may have encountered, and also younger voters your age,
Mhm.
the millennials, have they made a connection between issues that are relatable and voting? Um, and if not, then how do we help them to make that connection?
To be honest with you, I think the only reason people are as passionate as they are right now about voting is because we all want to get Donald Trump out of office. I think that is where this passion comes from. I
Okay.
think we still haven't realized the power again that local officials and local, ones that we elect, the power that they can have and the power that they can, the true change they can bring to our local communities, right? We
Right.
think that everything, again, we only think that things happen on a higher level with the president and things of that nature. So I don't think that we have, effectively communicated to the ones in our community that, hey, by you voting for so and so, so and so, so and so, these people can have a direct impact for your life, either for the better or for the worst, right? Because they're the ones that are making the laws and the ones that are making these policies and the ones that are taking these things back to their congressmen and the president and things of that nature. That's, either making your life that much better or that much worse. And so, no, I don't think we've done a great job of that. And I think we could do better, with first time voters and ones as young as myself and even, younger, communicating to them that, listen, by doing these things and truly doing your research and understanding what these people stand for and who's actually running, this
Right.
could help your life become that much better, right? Or this could give you the opportunities that you may have struggled to find or never had before. And I think when we find a way to communicate it and make it, again, like we talked about earlier, making it relatable, people actually listen. But we have to make it to the where to ask them, when we do this and we advocate to communicate this message with them, we have to ask ourselves first, why do they care? Why should they care? Why
Mm.
does this matter to them? And
Yes.
if we, effectively answer that question, I think everything else will pretty much take care of themselves. And I hope not to be too long-winded, but I saw something so earlier that was like really impactful, where it talked about until poor people are allowed to become congressmen and presidents and things of that nature, nothing will ever change.
Mm.
But the reason why poor people will never be able to do those things is because when you're a poor person, they automatically equate that to unsuccessful, and they don't even realize that the reason why this person may be poor now is because of the system that we're a part of. You
Right.
see what I'm saying? And when I saw that, it was profound. And I said, that's it. That's what we really, have to master is again. And I think the reason why they said until poor people are able to have that type of power, that's why it never will be relatable. So yeah, I think that's where it starts.
And so, making it relatable, do you think that something that may or may not be able to help is having community advocates, community
Right.
influencers like yourself and others, um,
Right.
more visible in
Right.
talking about not only the important issues in the community, but how
Right.
those issues connect to voting. Do you think
Wow.
that might be a solution or no?
I definitely do. I definitely do. And I'll be honest with you, Miss Kenya, like in the past, I was one that never was big on voting. I was never big on local elections. I was never, really caring about those things. But I believe in this too. I believe that sometimes we have to go through certain storms and certain hard times in
Mm.
order to see the beauty in every situation. And so I think in a way we almost needed Donald Trump to be the president to make us realize how important certain things such as this really are, right? But
Yeah,
on the other side of that situation, I also feel like community leaders and advocates such as myself, I feel like giving back to their community and serving your community has almost become like this popular trend to where certain people only want to give back and only want to serve their community for the camera, for the Instagram, for the interviews, for those type of things versus truly having a passion for it. So I don't think so not only should certain advocates and community leaders be able to do this, but I feel like it should be the ones that truly have a love for their community and truly doing it for the right reasons. And
yeah,
should be using their voice to do this because if you're not one of those individuals, then you don't really care anyway, right? You don't truly care about the quality of life of your community. And that's what community work is all about. It's trying to use your resources, your knowledge, the things you have in your reach to say, how can I make my community and my city and my world better than it was before. So
and
yeah, definitely using our voice.
I love that you mentioned that quality of life. And
Yeah.
so, that said, have you encountered colleagues, friends who have some sense of voter apathy, who feel like, my vote doesn't count, it doesn't matter? I know that you mentioned a few moments ago you weren't really into the local elections.
Right.
And
Right.
so, do you have other colleagues who or friends who
Yeah.
share that same viewpoint? And if so, how do you talk them into making them realize that this is important?
Miss Kenya, let me be frank. I'm not a ghetto or a hood person,
Yeah.
but I grew up in a hood part of town.
Yes.
So my local friends that I grew up with, a lot of those guys are ones that are still in the hood. Are a lot of those ones that are still hustling. A lot of those ones that are still figuring it out every day, right? And I can honestly say I know a lot of those guys have never stepped foot inside of a voter registration place or voted for anything for anyone, right? Because first of all, you have to think about in their situation, they're thinking about I've been in poverty my whole life, or
Yeah.
I've been struggling my whole life, or I've been dealing with these certain things my whole life. So my vote couldn't matter because if it did, I wouldn't be living the way I'm living for this long. You
Mm,
see what I'm saying? So they've been feeling that way their whole life, longer they've been able to know what a vote was.
yeah.
Because because if that was the case, like you said, I wouldn't be living this way. I wouldn't have to feel this way. I wouldn't have to hustle and struggle and steal and all of these different things just to make a way for myself. And
Right.
so I think, and then too, the other side of it is that they become convicted felons, or they become, in trouble with the law. Now they can't even use their voice, even if they wanted to, which
Right.
is again one more way of using systematic tactics to keep us from being able to use our voice because they know how powerful it is, right?
And
And
so,
so I think, like you said, your main question was how can we, convince those guys and those men and women to really realize that their voice does truly matter.
right.
Again, just making it relatable. The ones that do have the power to, make a change and to vote, is making them realize that the reason why you may be having to hustle this way is
Mhm.
because of the fact that you won't vote for local elections, and the pay and the minimum wage here is $10 when it could be $15, and you could go get you a job where you don't have to hustle anymore.
Exactly.
And things of that nature. So those real tangible, hard conversations that people don't even think about having. That, hey, you voting for these people can help minimum wage. You could actually have health care. Your mom wouldn't have to, live off Social Security alone anymore. Having those real hard, raw conversations, I think will wake up a lot of people. And so that's if it was me having those conversations with my homeboys and my friends that
Yeah.
have that type of mindset that their vote doesn't matter, those are the things I'm saying to them. It's figuring out, you know, how could them voting help their life, and then figuring out a way to effectively communicate that to them.
And I think that's key. When you're saying making it relatable and
Yeah,
effectively communicating,
yeah,
there's, a a way that you talk to your friends is
Yeah.
different from the way that you talk to your work colleagues. And so breaking it down and making it relatable so that people understand, I think is key.
But
Communicate.
think about it, Miss Kenya, how often do we even have those? Sometimes the conversations we have with work colleagues are the ones that we need to have with our friends. But
Yeah,
how often do we actually do that? Why? Either because it's uncomfortable, or we feel like they won't understand us, or we feel like they're going to judge us for trying to have an intellectual conversation,
yeah,
et cetera, right? And
yeah,
so when that happens, that I think that's what shuns a lot of people away from saying what's really on their heart and on their mind. And we compress and suppress those feelings, and just talk about, things that have no real meaning, no real substance, just to, I guess, mend the relationship, if you call it that. Or so I think that's a big part of it as well. You know what I mean? Is understanding like, listen, forget all of that. This is something that really needs to be heard. Um,
and I like that you said that, and how it relates to getting people motivated and engaged and involved in not only this election, but in future elections. I know you mentioned earlier that that some of the hype is around just trying to make sure that we have a change in leadership. And
Absolutely.
so, how do we make sure that the conversation, particularly as it relates to younger voters, first time voters, continues beyond this election where they continue to be engaged in the conversation and in important issues that can affect them?
I think making them realize how powerful their engagement is,
Mhm.
making them realize that, listen, by you being blind to the fact that you felt like your voice didn't matter, that your vote didn't matter, this is what has happened.
Right.
By you not being involved, this is what has happened. Not blaming it all on you, of course not, right?
Right. Right.
But by you choosing to turn away from this and act like it doesn't exist and this is not a real thing, these are the sort of things that we've had to deal with now. So imagine if you actually took the initiative to realize that your voice did matter, you did stay engaged, you did stay involved, you did stay in the know about all of these different things that are going on in our country and our local, even on a local level as well. Imagine the difference you could make. So
Yeah.
I think communicating those type of things with those individuals, like you said, those first time voters, ones younger than us, making it just realize that from that type of point of view,
Mhm.
I think it'll be a lot better,
Okay.
and a lot easier. But we also have to figure out a way to modernize and make being an advocate for your community a cool thing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, because we've done things this certain way for so long to where it's like it's become uh, just normal. It's become an everyday type of life of thing, and you know this better than anybody. If you keep doing something the same way forever, eventually you're going to become forgotten about, or it's going to become irrelevant, or it's going to break, right? And I think that's what has to happen. I feel like the conversation around voting and elections and those type of things has been the same dry conversation for
Yeah.
70, right? So we have to figure out how to make this a cool, modern, up to date, again, relatable. I keep throwing that word out there,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
thing and subject to where young people want to naturally, organically be pulled in. We don't have to force you to come do this. You see the value in it just from us, the way we present it to you. So I think that's another big part of it too, the presentation behind it. You can't expect a 16, 17, 18, how old are you? You have to be 18 to vote now, right? Or is
Right.
it 21? Right? You can't expect an 18-year-old, what's the new generation of kids? It's not millennials, it's Gen X.
No, that Gen Y, I think, or
Yeah,
something like that.
whatever.
Yeah.
Gen, like that. You can't expect an 18-year-old Gen kid to relate and to even care about something like I said, the conversation that's been going on back when the baby boomers were teenagers. They're
Right.
not they're not trying to hear that, right? So
Right.
I think that's a big part of it too. Is how can we make it relatable? How can we make it up to date? How can we make it modernized to where they feel like they're matter too? Their voice does count, right? And I
Yeah.
think if we can master that, which is something that we're working on with a close group of my colleagues and my mentors, called Power, POWAR,
Okay.
really figuring out how to modernize politics, on a local level, especially if, our local Arkansas officials to where ones understand like elections in politics doesn't have to be this boring, dry, redundant thing. It has this is your life, and this has an impact on your life, right? And I think that's what we're trying to master right now. So yeah, I think how do we modernize it? How do we make it better? How do we make it up to date?
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that. That whole concept and that whole idea that making voting not only relatable, but making it cool, making
yeah,
it a thing to do,
yeah,
because it is so important and messaging is key, I think. And I think that, that is the theme of the conversation, that not only is voting important, and it is,
hmm,
because it affects us and impacts us directly, but
yeah,
how can we make it cool, modernized for the younger generation? And I
yeah.
appreciate you saying that. And so, just to kind of wrap up the conversation, I just have one final question for you. Why do you vote?
Why do I vote?
Why?
Because if I don't use my voice, then there's no telling. Then I don't have any control over my future,
Yeah,
right? Because there are so many things that I want to do, so many special things that I want to give back to my community, to the youth that I speak with, that I mentor every day, to the less fortunate that I work with. There's so many things we want to do for them, and
yeah,
if I don't use my voice and have somewhat of control of the narrative of the people that control the funding, control the resources that we have, and all of these different things, how will I be able to give those people those things?
yeah.
Um, so I vote because I want to be in control of my destiny and my future. And I want my daughter to be able to be in control of hers, and so on and so forth. And so that's why. And
Right.
again, I never realized how important it was before, but you better believe I'm going to be at the polls before November 3rd. So, yeah.
That is good stuff. And Mr. Tidwell, thank you so much for spending some time with us
Yeah.
today, lending your voice, lending your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions. We appreciate it. And like we mentioned earlier, the early voting has already begun. Um,
Mhm.
Voting and election day is on Tuesday, November 3rd. So we want to encourage everyone to get out there and vote.
Absolutely. Please get out there and vote, guys. We need your voice. Your voice matters. If it didn't, they wouldn't try to suppress us and keep us away for so long. So we need you. All right. So please, 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 please.
And that's a wrap.
All right.